And would you mind clicking start video? Yep. Click got it. It's right. Yeah.
It's taking just a second. There we go.
And you can click, maybe just, do you want to click stop share for just a moment? So it's just, yeah. All right, perfect. Okay, so welcome everybody, and we're just knowing where to look here. So can I get a thumbs up if you guys can hear me and you can see us? Hey, I see some thumbs up. Wonderful. Good. Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Tanya Hertz. I'm the director of the Rec Innovation Lab here at San Diego Miramar College. We are so excited to have with us some presenters that I feel like I know you guys well, but I've never actually met them until today in person. We have with us Lois Song and Mike Chiv from Proven Recruiting. You've seen many of their workshops before, and this is the first time that we're doing it all together, though, and it's exciting. So welcome. I'm just going to pass it on over. I don't want to take up time with me talking. So welcome and take it away.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everybody for, let me see, let me pull out the frame here. I'm looking at this right now and seeing myself. No, thank you everybody for joining. This is a unique topic that, when Tanya, Lewis, and, the team discussed what we wanted to talk about, something that I think would be kind of relevant for new entrepreneurs coming into the business. And, we'll go through a little bit more detail about strategies, thoughts, our concepts on like when to give up, what that actually means. And we're excited to kind of go through it. But I am Mike Chiv. I am a recruiter at Proven Recruiting, a lead recruiter now, focused on finance and accounting recruiting within all across facets in San Diego, and then also different markets across the United States. Been at Proven for about 4 years now almost. And I used to be a financial analyst working in accounting and finance, and have now since transitioned into working as a recruiter, and love it so far. I've been doing a lot of stuff, and helping out with the Rec Innovation Lab has been something that we're super excited about and have been doing for almost 2 years now. So wow, it's been exciting for sure. First time in person, which is pretty cool. So it's great to see everything here.
Hi everyone, I'm Lewis Song, and I'm a little nervous. Yeah, it's definitely a little different and weird. Let's see where to start. This whole journey of being an entrepreneur is such an interesting one. We are starting our 15th year. It's interesting that this topic today is about quitting, because I actually quit my last company 15 years ago this month. And so, the whole idea of quitting is such an interesting thing. And, I'll be honest, this when should you quit or when should you give up? This whole idea, I think, it's a little bit clickbaity, because the answer, honestly, is never. But it's about what you should give up, rather than when you should give up. And so we're gonna go through some of the points here today. But just to give you a little bit of my background, if you don't know who I am, I really think of myself as a average normal guy. I was born in Korea, grew up in the Washington D.C. area from about 5 until I was 27 years old. I came to San Diego when my wife moved to San Diego for her job. I got into recruiting at that time. Didn't know anything about it. I was at K-Force for 11 years before I really was starting to get unhappy about year 9. Took me about 2 years to ultimately quit K-Force, and then decided to start Proven Recruiting with Ingram and Maryland and some others. And now through almost 15 years now, we're coming up to our 15th year anniversary in August. We've grown from our original 7 people now to, I think we're almost close to 70 this year. We've got operations now. We're headquartered here in San Diego, but we've got operations in Los Angeles, Dallas, and Austin. And last year we crossed the $24 million threshold in terms of revenue for the first time. We crossed 20 million for the first time and got to 24 million. And this year, if all things being well, but there's not a lot of things well right now. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, in Ukraine with oil and everything else. But if things go okay, we might even hit $30 million this year. So it's been an incredible ride. Thank you. But it's, with guys like Mike and all the other great people that proven that we've been able to do this. So with that, we'll get started and get on to the next slide.
Cool. All right. Wait, is it?
Okay, just a minute. There it goes. Huh. 1 second here. Tech issues, we'll figure it out. He's black. Maybe. Oh, this isn't got it.
So I hate public speaking.
Wow.
So much so that before we got here, I've actually made it a practice because we haven't done a lot of public speaking things. And right now, for those of you guys that can't see the audience, there's only about 7, 8 people here, 9 people. Not a big crowd. So it's not that intimidating, but I've done stuff with a couple hundred people, and we didn't know how big it would be. So
Yeah.
I have a tradition now before public speaking events where I actually take a shot. And it doesn't matter whether it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon or it's 7 o'clock in the morning. It just helps to kind of, make things a little, calm me down, or actually liven me up a little bit. Yeah. So, next time I'll bring the bottle.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so what can we see? Okay, so let's talk about if we go backwards to 2020, March of 2020. Okay, and we think about what actually happened at that point. We had the pandemic just started, right? And for the audience here, you guys are wearing masks still. But if you think back to that point, let's say that you're a restaurant owner. Okay, do you quit? Okay, do you give up at that point? Or do you change? Do you shift? Okay. And I think, regardless of whether you own a restaurant or frankly, in today's world, let's say that you own an import-export business that works with Ukraine or Russia. Okay. Or maybe you run a transportation business where all of a sudden gas prices, oil prices have skyrocketed. You run a transportation delivery company and all of a sudden your gas has gone from $4 a gallon to $5, $6 a gallon. I just saw it driving down here. Mike was commenting. He's like, was it Mike? Maybe somebody else earlier today. They commented, hey, look, it's $5.99 a gallon. I was like, you're not looking at the premium, which is like $6.30 a gallon. Okay. And so all of a sudden things have changed. I mean, 3 months ago, nobody was talking about Russia and Ukraine, really. Okay. 3 years ago, nobody was talking about COVID. Nobody was talking about shutting down restaurants. And so in today's world, okay, things are going to change. And the question that I think, really that I start with is, what's the dream? What is the dream? What's the goal? Is it to run a restaurant? Is it to run a business? Or is it to do something else? And the reason I ask that question is I think what you ultimately are giving up might be a technique rather than the larger dream, the larger business overall. Okay. And so, are we getting?
I think it's as good as we're gonna get.
Okay. All right. Oh, wow. And that's closed captioning as well. Cool. All right. So.
All right. I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, but one of the examples that we pretty much gave when it came to the thought process, I think Louis touched on when to give up, right? When we're going in, 2020 was a unique year for a lot of people in various different facets. industries that were impacted outside of even just this picture. It's the restaurant industry, hotel industry. You think about aerospace, airlines, all these travel agencies, right? We're all impacted to a certain extent because of a shift in the environment. And I think if you think of a lot of examples that starting a business, a lot of the external factors, internal factors, it can be related to funding. It can be a variety of different factors that play into when you want to give up or when you should give up. And we'll go through some criteria for that. But I think a good example maybe might be proven recruiting in general. Lewis can maybe mention a little bit about that aspect. I don't know if there was times when you wanted to give up, time to quit.
There's been there've been multiple occasions when we didn't know that we would ultimately survive. In 2013, we had grown from our original, again, 7 people, actually got to as many as 62 people. I think it was probably about March of 2013. And we had 9 offices at that point. We had offices in my, what I considered where I grew up, Washington, D.C. We had an office in Washington, D.C. We had an office in London, England, where Ingram was from. We had an office in Phoenix. We had an office in San Jose, Carlsbad, the one here in San Diego, Hollywood, and I think a couple, Madison, Wisconsin was another location. And we got to a point where all of a sudden some of our operations started to bleed. One of our customers stopped hiring. They stopped paying us. One of our customers stopped paying us at the tune of about $50,000 a week in receivables for about 4 weeks because they had transferred their operations, accounts payable operations to India. And so all of a sudden we had 9 offices with 62 people that we had to continue to support. And, frankly, my ego said, hey, I want to keep these operations open. I want to keep Washington, D.C. open. This is where I grew up. This is where my friends are. I'm going to be embarrassed. But ultimately, we ended up having to close all but 2 of the offices, all but San Diego and Los Angeles. And, I think that was a huge dent on the ego to go from 9 offices to 2 offices to go from, at one point, we were actually the 6th fastest growing staffing firm in the United States. Okay. There's 19,000 staffing firms in the United States, and we were the 6th largest staffing firm in the United States at that time. And then to go backwards, we went from, at that point, $18 million in revenue at that point, all the way down to $13 million the following year as a result of, frankly, bad decisions on our part. We weren't ready. And so ultimately, we had to make the decision to close London, Washington, D.C., San Jose, Phoenix, Madison, Carlsbad. There's one more in there somewhere. But there were 7 offices that we ultimately had to give up on. And, the choice was, do we give up on the entire company, or do we give up on specific segments of our operations and our business rather than the entire dream? So I think one of the big lessons in that moment was, when we look back and we reflected on that moment, it was, were we ready to scale? Were we ready to manage operations at that level? Did we have, there are 4 questions that ultimately for me came out of that struggle, which was, number one, is the business that you have sustainable? Okay. Number 2, are the processes that you have in the business repeatable? Number 3, are the processes scalable? And so can you do it with 1 operation, with 2, with 4, with 8, with 16, and so on and so on? And number 4, which might be number 1, which is it profitable? Okay. And ultimately we realized that those operations weren't profitable. And while it was great for the ego, we're 6th largest, we had 9 operations, we had Washington, D.C., we were international. Okay. We were, what was it, 2007 to 2000, 6 years in, we were an international recruiting firm. But really, it wasn't real. It wasn't legitimate because we hadn't taken the time to really make things that were sustainable, repeatable, scalable, and ultimately profitable. And so we had to give up those offices so that we come back and do it better. And now, even though we're not international, we now have, like I mentioned earlier, we have 4 operations here in San Diego, Los Angeles, Dallas, and Austin. And we're now even bigger than we were before with nearly 70 people and more revenue than we've ever had in the existence of the company. Let's go to the next slide. So, from a business standpoint, I think I don't know, sometimes I find this stuff really boring. But the number one, I was talking about this earlier today with some of our recruiters. And do you have the right customers? Okay, in today's environment, maybe it's the customers that you were serving are the wrong customers. And so whether it's the wrong customers, maybe it's the wrong services, maybe you should be switching that up and giving up on those customers. Sometimes, for example, you have too many customers. You're trying to serve low margin customers, high volume customers versus high quality customers, high margin customers. You can't do both. You can't be Walmart and Nordstrom at the same time. Okay. Walmart serves a purpose. I love going to Walmart. I love going to Walmart for, the household goods and products and services, toilet paper, okay, hair products and that kind of stuff. But if I'm going to go to Nordstrom, it's for a different experience. It's for a different service. It's for different products. If you can get the same thing at the same place, it'd be kind of weird. Okay. And so, really understanding what your products and services are, who your customers should be, is a really important aspect. And I think one of the most difficult things to do as an entrepreneur, and frankly, just as a human being, is ultimately understanding what to say no to, because we want to serve anybody that asks us, and we want to say yes to helping them. But ultimately, if you're spread too far, you can't serve everybody, and you end up serving nobody. Okay. You want to talk about the rest of the stuff?
Yeah. So I think, from business school, they talk about SWOT analysis. I'm sure Tanya knows a lot about that. So strengths, weaknesses, what opportunities and threats, right? That's an important analysis that I think when you go through the process of evaluating your business plan, figuring out your comp set, people or competitor set, people that are within the industry that could be people to emulate, or how do you differentiate yourself as a company, right? Who your competitors are, so important. I think that is a factor that I think plays into a lot of business entrepreneurship and determining if you want to stay in that business or not, and how do you separate yourself as a unique company.
So let's talk about that for a second. Just stand together here. The question I think you constantly have to ask yourself is, what makes you special? And whether that's as a human being, and really it's not about what you think. Well, that's fine as far as, how it makes you special. Okay, you're special because you think you're special. But how do you act differently? How do you behave differently in the marketplace? Okay, so when people ask us what's different about Proven, okay, some of the things that we say are, we do jujitsu in the office at Proven. Okay, that has nothing to do with recruiting, but we do jujitsu in the office at Proven Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you want to come by 11:30 to 1 o'clock, I will help you roll in the office and teach you some jujitsu. Okay, awesome. Okay, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday jujitsu. We have a book club. Okay, on Fridays. Okay, we cover different books. We covered Grit. We've covered Take the Stairs. We've covered a number of different books. We've covered leadership books, sales books, personal development books, and diversity books. Okay. What are some of the other things? We have a program that we called Unplugged, because of so many people. I don't know how many people were on Zoom here today, but most of the company today is remote. Okay, most of the company is remote. We've got, like I said, nearly 70 people. I go into the office every single day, but in the 5,000 square foot room or office, but there are about 4 or 5 of us in the office every single day. Most other people, including the other operations, are home every single day. So let's say that there are about 10, maybe 15 out of the 70 that are in the office every single day. Okay, but everybody else is in a square box. We're a rectangular box here, right? And so we really don't get a chance to meet each other. And so we started a program called Unplugged, where we feature one person for an hour every 2 weeks. And we literally ask them about their lives, where they grew up, about their parents, about everything except for work. And they bring 5 pictures with them. And then we ask them about the 5 to 10 pictures. Mike, I think I had 20. It took, he had way too many pictures.
A lot of life stories.
Yeah, he had he has lots of life stories. But this is a way for us to connect with people, frankly, that's different. As a recruiting firm, we really don't do anything that's different from other recruiting firms. Okay. Whether it's Walmart or Nordstrom, going back to that example, from a differentiation standpoint, they have goods, they sell their goods. Okay. How they treat their employees and how they treat their customers and how they treat each other is honestly one of the main differences. When you go into Walmart, there's a specific experience that you get. When you go into Nordstrom, you have a specific experience. And that's really, in my opinion, the difference in terms of how we operate as a business, is that how we treat our people. But ultimately, whether you're Walmart or Nordstrom, you get a good, you put it on the shelf, customer comes in, they get it, they buy it, they leave. Okay, the process is ultimately the same, but it's about how you're treated along the way. That's ultimately what the difference is, and how people make each other feel is what the difference is as far as proven is concerned. And so when you're putting yourself out there as a business, the question really is, what is the difference? How are you special? And, what is the things that you do that make you special versus just thinking that you're special? Everybody thinks that they're special, but it's the stuff that you do that really is what makes you different. Okay. What's this last bullet point here?
Who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
So whether that's your business partner, most importantly, and also I think one thing that I was reading as I was kind of doing research for this topic is who you get feedback from, right? I think it's easy to get feedback from people that are an echo chamber of what you believe in. I think it's good to have people that you surround yourself with that will give you constructive feedback, that's going to give you answers maybe they don't want to hear. Maybe you should shift a different direction. Maybe you should focus on a different product. And I think that's just as important, and taking your ego a little bit out of it, hearing and understanding that there are different ways to look at how you slice the pie and formulating your business is super important. Yeah, I mean, Lewis has a co-founder as well, Ingram, and I think they both embody 2 different types of people, right? Ingram is probably more of the orator, and
Ingram loves talking.
Yeah,
by the way, this is his thing, and he would be totally comfortable, and he would love doing this. And this isn't the whole reason why I take a shot before coming out here. Okay. Ingram doesn't drink either. So there's another huge difference. I don't drink that much, but occasionally, but he and I have the same values in terms of how we treat people. And I think when you are starting a business, one of the biggest questions is, do I get a partner? Do I hire people? What kind of people do I hire? Who should I hire first? The question really comes down to character. Are the people that you're about to work with, regardless of whether they're your partners or your employees, people that you can trust with the business? Because the other stuff you can teach. You can teach the Excel skills. You can teach the recruiting skills. You can teach the other stuff. Some of it's harder to learn than others. Okay. But the trust factor, the loyalty factor, the character factors aren't teachable. They either have them or they don't. And I think that's something that is, when we say we give up on somebody or give up on something, if you've got something, or if you're in a relationship, frankly, where you don't trust the person, regardless of whether it's personal or business, I would say that is a relationship that you should give up. Okay. Are we still on?
Technical issues with the camera.
I think we're having issues with the camera.
Yeah.
Can people see us, by the way?
Maybe
Anybody online?
No, your screen is black, but the presentation is up and visible.
Okay.
They can hear them, they just can't see you guys. Yeah, it's not.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the next. No, it's not. That one's not on.
I can do it now.
Oh, you know what? We can do this. So we'll use this camera instead. All right. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Let's take this one.
Yeah, I don't know if we can switch to this camera.
We're using our camera on our yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind.
Maybe you can switch to the next slide.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Next slide.
Yeah. So another important topic that, as we were discussing, kind of breaking into the market is evaluating your micro and macro environment. So understanding what's going on internally within the economy that you're in, but then also the global economy. For instance,
Gas.
yeah, gas would be a perfect example.
Has anybody looked at airline prices recently? I had a friend ask me yesterday. He's like, "Hey, do you have any points?" I was like, "No, why?" He's like, "Well, I'm trying to go back to Baltimore. Right now, they're asking for $1,400 round trip for economy class." That changed in the last 2 weeks from what it was. It was, I think, about $700, maybe $500 to go to Baltimore. We're not talking New York City, right? Okay. Yeah, Europe, right? So, is this the right time to get into a transportation business? Okay. Or should you be considering something else for the moment? Okay. And so, that's at least the macro environment. Want to talk about the micro? I'm not sure.
Well, it's kind of a mix of both, but
Okay.
yeah. But the other thing you brought up was timing, right? I think that's the most important thing to think about in 2020. I'm sure a lot of businesses closed, but then, there's probably some opportunity as well, but understanding the timing. And I think that plays into micro as well. Understanding where you're at in your business, what life stage you're at, if you're making a product yet or you're not, and if you're going to bring it into market, when the right time is to bring that into market.
You know what? I want to stop right there for a second. Life stages. Okay. I think, when we started Proven, actually it was a horrible life stage, completely insane to do what we did. My wife and I had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. Okay. My business partner had 2 boys in private school. He is married and we were both at a place where financially we weren't that settled. And I think, experientially, we were at the right place. We had a lot of knowledge. We had a lot of experience in terms of starting a business, running a business. But in terms of where we were in our lives personally, it wasn't the ideal situation. I don't think there's ever going to be an ideal situation, but for those of you that have less stressors in life, okay, honestly, if you're not married, if you don't have kids, it's probably a little bit easier to be 100% focused on running a business versus being a husband or a wife, being a father, okay, having to do with a lot of things in addition to running a business. And so for those of you guys that are considering it, I think it's an extremely important thing to consider when you're considering starting a business or running a business, or you've got to have somebody in your life, a spouse or supporting, loved one that can help you financially and emotionally and mentally, because it's going to be a really rough time, at least for the first couple of years and maybe even longer.
Cool. I think we already talked about the.
Oh, by the way, my wife said to me when I told her, "Hey, I'm going to quit," she said, "Really? What are you going to do? We're going to start a recruiting firm." Huh. Okay. I was like, "Are you worried?" It's like, not really. So, I was really lucky, or I am really lucky, that I have a really supportive spouse. But I think that's one of the most important things, going back to having somebody, surrounding yourself with the right people, people that are going to be supportive with your dreams and your goals, even during the tough times. We ended up cutting out. I remember the first couple of years of our business. No more Starbucks. That was completely out the door. Okay. We didn't eat out but once a month. Okay. We used to eat out at least once a week with a family. We stopped eating out for about 2 years. One thing. I quit March of 2007. Okay. I didn't earn another paycheck until January of 2009. 2 kids, 2 and 1. My wife, a year later in 2008, quit her job. Okay. And she then started she had started a nonprofit, and she was running a nonprofit only. And so we were living off of her income of $50,000. Okay. We'd gone from making like $300,000 a year as a couple to down to 50. Okay, I know, so for 50 is what some people make, but we really, when you're going into that type of situation, you really got to consider all of the ramifications and considerations of the financial as well as the emotional and mental impact that it'll have on you as a family. So just one other thing to consider.
All right, we can go to the next slide. All right. So purposefully, I put a chess, a picture of a guy doing chess. We talked about tactics and techniques. I mean, Lewis, because of, I think, depending upon the timing, depending upon all these things we talk about, the business plan, your competitors, the shift in the market, the micro and macro environmental things that change. How do you shift your tactics and your techniques when it comes to the way you're going to approach any shift in those specific pieces of the pie?
So I want to talk about jujitsu.
This is perfect.
So jujitsu, you never know who you're going to roll with. That's what you call it when you do jujitsu. Okay. You could be somebody like Mike, who is 20 years younger than I am. Okay. He's fast. He's strong. It could be somebody who is much bigger and heavier. Okay. I'm 160 pounds. The person could be 180. They could be 250 pounds. Okay. And they could be shorter. They could be rounder. Or it could be somebody a lot smaller and lighter. Okay. It could be female. Okay. And so, in those situations, you can't roll the same way. And just like in business, you can't do the same tactics depending on who the customers are, depending on what the environment is like, depending on who your competitors are. And so, to size up what's happening in the moment is one of the most important things. Mike is extremely fast. Okay. One of the things I try to do with Mike when we roll is slow him down. I can't play his game. I'm not 30 years old, and I can't move as fast as he can. And so I make him play my game. I can't play his game. And so when you're going into a business environment, if you're going into a deal, if you're going into doing something with your competitors, are you playing their competitors' game, or are they playing your game? And it's something to really consider as you're moving into that environment. With a bigger guy, I can't out-muscle a bigger guy. I can't move the bigger guy. I got to get him to move himself and get out of the way so that I can do what I need to do with a bigger guy. Okay. And so, just something to consider as you're considering your competitors, your competitive landscape. Who are you going up against? What are they like? As opposed to blindly going in and saying, this is what I do. I do it every single time. I'm going to do it this way. And I'm not going to change how I have whatever tactic I'm going to use. If I tried to outspeed Mike, I would lose every single time. Okay. That's why I don't.
But I still get beat, so that's okay. That's actually a very good analogy. Obviously, chess is very similar too, but very tactical.
By the way, jujitsu is considered physical chess. Okay. You always have to think 3, 4, 5 moves ahead of your opponent, while physically trying not to get choked or your arm broken or your leg broken. So it's still a great analogy as far as the picture is concerned, the image is concerned.
We can go to the next slide because this one actually talks very similar to that piece. Very important, right? I think I said it 3 times because it's so important. We stressed it before, but stress it more on the slide. Obviously, the cash flow. I'll let you kind of mention a little bit about it, but I think it's the profitability, the ability to be sustainable. Obviously, if you have people that you've hired, if you're going to be able to keep them on as employees, are you going to pay yourself maybe 2 years later? Can you afford the business? And, what is your trajectory of actually making money? I think all factors and questions to think about that are important, right? I think this does play, that's probably the most important thing out of everything that we talked about when it comes to when the right time is to keep the business going.
Yeah.
Or shifting.
So I think the major emphasis when I hear people that go to business school, they talk about the SWOT analysis, and that's why I'm like, It's boring. We never did a SWOT. Honestly, we never did a SWOT analysis when we started the business. Okay. We honestly almost didn't have a business plan. We just said, well, we'll do what we did before. Okay. Do technology financing. I guess we had one, but we just never documented it. But the one thing that we did do, and really this is a credit to Ingram, was that we had a cash flow plan. Okay. So when we make a sale, how long does it take for us to collect on that money? And for us, it takes about 90 days. Okay. Now, for employees, are the employees going to wait 90 days before they get paid? No. And in California, you have to pay employees, I think it's every 2 weeks. You have to pay consultants every week. So we're now going into the hole, okay, up to 90 days before we collect, even though we've already paid out for our employees, for our consultants that we hire, for the temps that we have, for the office furniture, for the rent, for the electricity, for the computers, for the internet, for everything that runs, for coffee, okay? For everything that costs to run a business. We've already paid out all those expenses, but we haven't made a dime yet. We've sold, but we actually haven't collected. And so the cash flow component of running a business, I think, is one of the least emphasized, the least studied, the least prepared aspects of actually running a successful business. Because if you don't have the cash flow to sustain, even though you make a ton of sales, but you don't get the cash coming in consistently, quickly, it ultimately kills you, because are your employees going to stay if you have no cash flow? Okay. Is your landlord going to keep you if you're not paying the rent? Nope. And so this is what I think one of the most important things that you know, if you don't have, and by the way, for those of you guys that, although it's a recruiting based, effectively a cash flow projection, if anybody wants to email me at lsong@provenrecruiting.com, or you can email Tanya, but lsong, LSONG @provenrecruiting.com. If you want to email me, I will send you the template that we use to help start up different operations in different businesses. And it's effectively a cash flow projection. Okay. And so that we really understand when we know that we'll actually get the money in the door, and how much we're spending, and when we're actually break even, and when we'll actually be cash flow positive. Okay, next slide.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, it's a good enough time, 15 minutes for questions.
All right.
But I wasn't looking and monitoring the chat. Was there any specific questions in the audience, questions in the chat?
I was watching. They were just commenting how they agreed with your comments about, you know, the airline industry and whether or not it was good time, or different questions like that. But let me see if we have any other ones. Someone said, they just made a comment. I feel like we need to always remind ourselves our product and service that we are providing before quitting, while understanding our own limitations.
Here, I can mention something as we're just talking. So, you know, as we're doing this presentation, right? I'm thinking it solely as starting a business when you give up, because we're presenting to a bunch of entrepreneurs. But, you know, I mentioned this to Lewis, and realistically, there's been numerous times that I've quit in my life, right? Whether that's quitting my last job. Originally, I graduated from San Diego State in finance, did accounting and finance and hospitality, realized that wasn't an industry I wanted to be in, because I worked in San Francisco and everybody's working tech. I left that job to do tech. And then I realized, again, I was like, that's not my passion. So I shifted into recruiting. But I think one learning thing that I realized about that whole process of, per se, quitting, but then also redoing something again, is asking myself that same question of what drives me, what makes me happy, what's going to keep me moving forward, whether that's my dream of being a recruiter. That was not something that I envisioned when I was working in finance and graduating with that degree. So I think the main learning point is that you may start with one idea and one instance in this specific moment, but I think over time it changes and grows and you get better. I mean, it doesn't get easier, but you hopefully get better as you improve upon what you've learned, that going through business plans, going through enough failed businesses, going through enough challenges, whether that is relationships or businesses or school or jobs. It could be anything, right? And I think going through enough of those trials and tribulations, you start to try to find your way and carve your path. And, you know, I could say that like joining Proven, I've been able to have that, and it kind of meets all my criteria for what I was looking for. But I would have never found that unless I didn't take that risk to do something different, to try something different, to say it's okay to quit this job, to go for something else. But you have to take the chance. And I think that's such an important thing as an entrepreneur, is that you guys are all resilient in being able to, you know, aspiring for a goal and aspiring for a specific product or creating some service and going for it and making it happen. Right. So, you know, like we talked about in the beginning, it may be a little bit clickbaity to say when you really should give up, but in reality, you never stop. I think it's more so just how you divert or change direction, or how you modify based upon things that you go through in life that make you better.
I hate to do this, but I've got to go take my son to a driving class. My wife was going to take him, but his permit is in my car, so I got to go pick him up. But I am going to log in by phone. So if there are any other questions, I'm going to take it by phone. So if you guys just give me a minute, I will be back on. I'm not actually on right now, but
Cool.
okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yes,
Thank you
Grab
so
my
much.
computer.
sure.
Thanks, guys.
Any questions or anything? Sure.
Two questions. One, what is a heuristic that you think most people follow that you think is a bad heuristic to follow for when to quit? So what's something that people, identify, say, this is a good time to quit, but you've actually identified it's not a good time to quit? And conversely, what's one that maybe some people don't recognize as a maybe like red flag they should adhere to? I'm trying to say the question.
Yeah. So you're saying a specific characteristic, right?
Or a heuristic, something like, if this is happening, then this should be a signal to quit. But what is one that you believe that people follow that they ought not to, and what is one that they don't follow that you believe they ought to?
That's a good question. I think that it's very challenging because it's subjective, right? I think it depends on the case by case situation. But as you go through this presentation I was creating with Lewis, I was really thinking internally about if I were to create a business, how I would approach it. And I think the stressor is something that we probably harped on towards the end is cash flow. And I'm a finance person, and I think about all the people that I know. My family has started numerous businesses, from restaurants to laundromats to liquor stores, as entrepreneurs and immigrants on their own. And cash flow is so important. If the business is not sustainable, whether you say that's year 2, year 3, I think that's when you're starting to have to figure out, is this something that I should give up on or divert? And I think in tandem with that, just as important is, we talked a little bit about it, but the business circle. So the people you surround yourself with, your founder, the people that you hire, the people that are involved in you creating your business plan are super important, right? And but you should be able to be challenged as well. Going to people, I think going to co-founders that you have the same morals about, like surrounding yourself with people that have the same morals, but then going to people that have those same morals, but that can challenge you and give you perspective that isn't always straightforward that you want to hear. But I think that is probably the two most important things, because you could have the business plan, you could have the tactics and the techniques, and depending upon the timing, these are all have to come into play. But I think it's important to know, like, when you're going to try to make money and when you need to divert your attention and tactics, in addition to who you surround yourself with. But if you're by yourself, then getting feedback from people, other founders that are maybe in the same space, that could give you some concrete details of like when I should divert or when I shouldn't. Which is great that Rec has this program with people here so that you can bounce ideas off of and get positive reinforcement, right? That was a great question. Hopefully that answered it. I'm not even sure. Other question? Sure.
Yeah. How do you create this brainstorming session with the co-founder on why we're special? How do you want to doing that?
So you mean like if you already have a business plan and you want to go and brainstorm and kind of get an idea of like, hey, how do I get concrete feedback? I mean, it depends. I think when you go through the brainstorm, I think you should have a goal in mind to get out of it, right? Whether it's like you need feedback. Like I think the way we structure it was pretty succinct, and I liked it. Where it was like, You talk about the macro micro environment. You talk about the kind of the timing. You talk about the business plan, the SWOT analysis, and competitor analysis. You talk about the cash flow. All things that I think that holes can be poked in, right? Depending upon how you want to approach a co-founder about it. So if you have an idea, you go to a co-founder, you come up with this. I mean, generally speaking, the business plan is all of this, and you can kind of figure out which one of those categories you need feedback on, right? I think that's the best way to approach it, in my opinion, because you have a formulated structure and then you can come with questions. But anytime you go to a co-founder, you got to understand that they're busy, right? And they have their own priorities. So you have to make sure that you're being useful of your time with them, and then also being respectful of their time as well. But if they're sharing the same morals and the values that you have for creating a business, and you really, I guess, look up to them, I think, they should be responsive and try to help. But I think most importantly, you have to come with a plan and come with like some type of something that you're going to get out of it, where it's like, hey, how do I solve? I think the main question is what problem can they help you solve? Number one question, right? Because I think there's always, you can go or there's so many different variables and so many different things that you can look at. But most importantly is like, how can you help me solve this problem? Or what are your ideas on helping me solve this problem? And then you brainstorm from there, whether it's cash flow, whether it's the macro environment, whether that's the tactics I should shift a new industry, whether that's the timing, if it's the right timing. I think all are different variables that are so important when it comes to, creating a business, right?
Yeah, like what variables are make us successful and respect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah,
I think we have a couple of questions from online.
sure.
So
I can't see,
we're,
sorry.
Early on, who is overseeing the tracking of cash flow, and do you currently use a software platform for this? And I think Lewis is on Zoom as well.
Okay, cool.
Lewis, if you want to jump in, you're more than welcome to.
I mean, I definitely would use Excel. That's or Google Sheets because it's free, right? That is like, and that's most importantly, like I love Excel. I was an analyst. I used that to build my cash flow statements when I was forecasting and budgeting. But there's templates out there online. I mean, I'm sure Rec may have some general templates. I'm not sure, but you should reach out to Lewis if you want to use our template, whether that's, it could be varied, right? There's different expenses that play into it. There's different streams of revenue. There's different ways to slice and dice the data to understand where you're standing from a cash flow perspective month to month. But Excel is number one. I would use that because it's free. You don't have to use a whole new software. But at some point when you scale, right? Like in instance, our company, I think we use QuickBooks, but at some point you scale to the point where you're like now needing to track hundreds and thousands of expenses that are going in and invoices and billing and all these different aspects, right? So, I mean, depending on if you're just need to pay bills, depending upon how you scale, there's different systems you can use, but generally speaking, you start with Excel, and as you scale, it's QuickBooks, it's NetSuite, it's Oracle, it's SAP, like all different platforms that eventually, become more complex depending upon the business. And then what was the other question? Or something else? Okay.
Well, who would you recommend do it? So I would.
Oh, I see.
The start of this.
I would say, yeah. I mean, I guess in the beginning, it would probably be the founder, the person that knows the ins and outs of the business and knows the cash flow. Whether you outsource it or not, it just really depends. Like, if you're paying for stuff on your credit card and that credit card is managed by a different executive assistant, maybe they're kind of tracking it and you're just looking at a high level perspective of the summary. But I definitely think you need to know, at least on a monthly basis, where you stand financially. So you're not just burning through cash and it's the same thing as budgeting, right? If you're burning through a ton of money and you don't know the ins and outs, then you're going to be in the hole, and it's going to be probably a deeper situation you're in that you have to dig yourself out of. But yeah, Excel. And then also I would do it personally just because I like the control. I like to know where I'm going, but at some point you can probably outsource it once you get comfortable and you can teach it and tell people, how to manage it specifically.
I have a question. As we're discussing cash flow, are you staying primarily in one stream of revenue? Do you have a business development department? And if so, are you doing R&D prior to deciding on that particular vertical industry to develop business in, or do you just go into business? So I'm looking at this of course cash flow, and then that's my second question: R&D, business development, and then the third one is, are you what do you consider a great profit margin? I consider 40% net after all gross and cost operation is paid. I don't want to be in business if I can't see at least 40%. So what do you?
If we can achieve 10% net profit, we're doing great in the recruiting world.
Oh, at volume. Okay, so if
It varies by industry, though. I think it's so important to know your sample set and what other, if it's tech, hey, what are other businesses that are manufacturing or other companies that are doing tech or SaaS or defense, right? Or whatever it is, the service you're providing. How does that relate? And kind of, judging by the sample set, what those general profit margins are. I don't know if you can really find that information online. You may be able to from a larger company scale, but that's where I would start. As for the cash flow statement, I mean, that was a very specific example. So I'm hard to say the R&D budget and the business development budget. I think you're referring to like a tech company, but I'm not sure. I think that's I would have to see what cash flow statement you're looking at to determine what that would entail.
For in reference to really identifying what market margins are, I always talk to my bank officers because they know other businesses that they really know what's real. They know in terms of what businesses are really making a margin. In the placement business, you're right, 10%, sometimes 20%, Janice Forroyd.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I think I might have cut you off there. Well, at any rate, did you have anything else to add there?
No, I think we're good.
So wonderful. Do we have other questions from the audience here? Or, sorry. Yeah, Tommy, go ahead.
All right, so it seems to me like the question of quitting, the flip side of that is a question of possibility and probability assessment. So, quit if you start quitting, is it something possible or I guess the general advice from your experience of quitting when perhaps you failed in some way in assessing the possibility of something or probability of something, or something you've learned in the or you could maybe share about how you might assess probability or possibility in order to determine whether you should quit something.
That's a good question. I think I've never started a business, so it's hard to say, but I can relate it to my parents. My parents started, let's think about this. So,
Hey, Mike. Mike.
Yep.
The question, the audio was really bad, so I don't think anybody could hear the question. Could you repeat the question?
So, Tommy, do you want to come up here and just ask?
That might be easier.
Yeah.
So Mike, you're the clearest person because you're right next to the mic. If you could repeat the question. Tanya, you're a little faint.
A little bit worried, yeah. Well, I was saying that it seems to me like the flip side of choosing whether to quit or not is an assessment of possibility or probability, in that one would quit if they determined that something was impossible or improbable. So I was just wondering if you guys had any advice from your experience or some wisdom you may have picked up on how to assess possibility or probability of outcomes when determining whether you should quit or not on anything.
Well, I mean, I think there's pretty public statistics when it comes to the number of small businesses that fail. I think it's something like 50% of small businesses fail within the first year, and then I think it's 90% of small businesses fail within the next 5 years or something like that. So overall, I think starting a business is not a good idea. Now, having said that, there's, for example, how much experience do you have in the business? One of the things that we talked about in one of our former workshops was one of the most important things I think people can do as an entrepreneur is, before they become an entrepreneur, is that they learn on somebody else's dime. They actually run whatever business that they want to run at somebody else's business. I learned from K-Force at K-Force for 9 years, or actually 11 years before starting Proven. And so I think that increased my probability. I actually ran businesses or a business for K-Force, and it just happened not to be my money. And so I think that gave us a huge probability of success, or a greater probability of success than than people who, I know people that are getting into staffing and recruiting because they think, oh, I know how to connect people. I've helped people get jobs before. Helping people get jobs is one thing, but actually running a recruiting business is a totally different thing. It's like, I love to bake, but I'm going to open up a bakery. Well, have you actually run a bakery before? Have you run a business as a bakery? Have you employed people? Have you ordered supplies? Have you delivered? Have you, run a retail operation or a delivery operation? And if the answer is no, in my opinion, the odds for success, the probability of success is very low.
Yeah, agreed. And I just want to add one thing just quickly here. There are things that you can do to mitigate against failure. And like Lois was saying, we've talked about this in other workshops. Some things that you can do to increase the probability of succeeding. You're doing it right now, going to workshops, increasing your network, being in an incubator significantly increases your probability of success and decreases your probability of failing. So there are lots of things that you can do, and you're doing them. So we're just about out of time here. I want to just give just a minute, the last minute here to Mike and to Lois, if there's anything that you want to leave the audience with before we thank everyone for coming.
Sure.
Mhm.
I think the gist of it, right? So like we talked about, when to give up was really, I don't think there is a real time to ever give up on your dreams, whether that's, and you'll be many times in your life, you're going to divert different directions, whether it's a business, whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship. And I think ideally, right, it doesn't get easier, you just get better. That's how I've always seen it. And as I've done recruiting, as I've helped people find jobs, as I help people find their careers, I've realized that, sometimes making a shift and taking a risk can be good, right? Sometimes it's maybe not the right time. Maybe there's other different factors, but there never should stop chasing your dreams at the general gist of it.
And Louis, is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
No, I think Mike said it really well.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah.
I think the idea of, just knowing what your goals are and what your dreams are, ultimately you may change the vehicle, the platform, the technique by which you achieve.
And you cut out there. So I think with that, we can go ahead and wrap it up and say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Mike. And just a reminder to everyone, we have lots more workshops coming up over the course of the semester. Please do join us for more, and you'll be able to see this video recording on our YouTube channel, Innovation Lab at YouTube. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful night, and don't give up on your dreams. Thank you.